نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Everyone needs to have a sense of purpose, and they need to feel like they're getting somewhere in life in general, and whenever we're doing some kind of a task. No one likes the feeling of sitting in a class and feeling like, okay, this class is not getting me anywhere, either because I know it all, or the subject is so boring, or because it's of no interest to me. Similarly, if someone were to ask to play basketball and the person who, let's say, ran the court said, yes, you can play, but you can only bounce the ball 10 times while standing and you can't move around the court. You would say, well, that's not fun. Or someone said that, yes, you can play, but you can't run while you're playing basketball, you can only walk around. And that would make for a very boring basketball game. You could hardly call it basketball. What happens in all of these situations when either we're not doing enough or we're not doing it to an intensity that is satisfactory to us, we lose interest right away. This happens in all aspects of life. And it happens in Deen as well. Sometimes we start losing our connection or our interest in Deen. We start losing our inclination to practice Deen. Even though we might like to, we might want to from inside, we have the intention of practicing or practicing more or practicing better, but the interest just isn't there, the motivation isn't there. So it's usually one of two things. Aside from the whispers of shaitan and aside from our own laziness, there are usually two things that get us there. A, we're not using our potential. We're not using our potential by doing enough, or if we are doing the basics, we're not doing it with a high enough quality. Not doing it enough is like going to a basketball court, dribbling the ball 10 times and walking away. That was not basketball. You went and you dribbled the ball. There's so much more that you can do, there's so much more that you should do, but you just didn't do it, you walked away. How many times do you suppose you could do that? Most people couldn't do that more than once. They would say, this is just a waste of time. Similarly, having a game of basketball but not being able to run around, not being able to actually play, the intensity isn't enough. So you lose interest. When we lose interest in Deen, it's either because we're not doing enough or what we're doing is not intense enough. So sometimes a person is lacking in their salat. A person feels disconnected from Deen, but they're actually lacking in salat. They're not doing the basics. So how do they expect to be connected when they're not doing the basics? You have to do the basics to feel connected to the Deen. If somebody is not praying their 5 times salat, if somebody is not keeping a basic connection with the masjid, they're not doing the basic things, this Deen is very quickly going to lose relevance in their life because they haven't made time for it. They haven't made the space for it. Similarly, if somebody is praying 5 times a day, but they're doing it with no attention whatsoever, their mind is somewhere else. And from the time they say Allahu Akbar till the time they say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, their mind is wandering about everywhere but in salat. That salat is going to become quite meaningless after. It's just a matter of time. A person can only do that for a certain amount of time, and then they'll start skipping salat. And then this person will say, yes, I pray but I don't feel it. I pray but I don't get the benefit of it. I pray but I don't feel connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is not because there is something missing in salat, it's because there's something missing in us. That's what it comes back to. We have unused potential And whenever we have this unused potential, it leads to boredom and disinterest. So what our mind is actually telling us when that happens is that I should actually, and I could actually be doing much more. I could have prayed a much better salat, but because I didn't use my potential, that salat doesn't have any meaning. Just like that basketball game when no one's running around, they're only walking. There's so much more that they could have done, but because they didn't apply themselves, it made for a very boring and sorrowful experience. That this is it's just sad. So sometimes we need to turn up the intensity. We need to turn up the intensity in our deen, either by doing more or doing it better. Doing more because we're not doing enough. There's actually much more that we can do, but because we're not doing it, we end up losing interest. Sometimes it shows on the faces of students. They're praying, but they're not really there. Their mind is not really there. Their heart is not really there. They're doing it because they have to. And what that actually means is not that they're a bad person. That's not what it means. What it means is they could be doing much more, but they're just not doing it. They haven't applied themselves. And if they started applying themselves and pushing themselves to maybe pray a higher quality of salat, this salat will pull them towards itself. This salat pulls us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once a person feels the joy, the pleasure that lies in the intensity of worship, in the devotion that comes with worship, there's no turning back. Once that thing touches your heart, it changes you. Like Ibrahim ibn Adham, somebody reminded him once, it touched his heart. He heard noises on the roof of his palace. So he went up to see, what's this footsteps on my ceiling? So when he climbed up, he found there's a guy there walking around on his roof. He said, what are you doing here? Who are you? What are you doing here? He said, I'm looking for my camel. He said, what kind of fool looks for a camel on top of a roof, and what are you really doing here? He said, yeah, only a fool would look for a camel on top of a roof. Similarly, only a fool would look for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the lifestyle that you have. This message hit him so hard that same night he did a bit of reflection. He said, really, on one side I want to get close to Allah. I have all these aspirations of being close to Allah and getting my du'as accepted and being like this and being saved on the Day of Judgment, but I'm not doing anything for it. That same night he wrapped up his bags and he took off. He was the ruler of his area. Next morning, people come to his room, his palace, his court. He's not around. They're like, this guy's gone. What happened? Then they sent a search party out looking for him. And they looked and they could not find him. Then finally one day, they found him in the thick of the forest, wearing these simple clothes and just sitting there worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said, please, we need you. He said, no, I need something else right now. There is something else that I need right now. Otherwise, my purpose of life will be unfulfilled. Once it touches you, there's no going back. Harun Rashid had a son, young, bright, intelligent man, filled with potential. But he saw that these worldly luxuries that my father has are only going to spoil me. So he turned all of them down and he spent a life by himself worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, I don't want to have anything to do with all these luxuries and enjoyments. So it has been done. It's been done over and over and over again. But when we feel disinterest in our deen, when we feel lethargic towards our duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means we need to turn up the intensity. The intensity is not there. How do you turn up the intensity? Well, look at each act that you do in deen. What is the quality of your salat? What is the quantity of your salat? What is the quality of your tilawat of Quran? What is the quantity of your tilawat of Quran? What is your quality of good deeds and your quantity of good deeds? And what is the level of sins and mistakes? And what is the amount of sins and mistakes? Once you take a quick look at that, you'll know what shifts you have to make. Doing this, moving from this direction, from this point to that point, requires this effort, this sacrifice, It requires a cleansing process. That cleansing process is called tazkiyah. As long as a person is going through this process where they're challenging themselves, tazkiyah is taking place, and this person's interest, love, devotion, dedication to Deen is increasing many fold. And you will never find this person disinterested. You will never find this person lazy. So sometimes what we're really missing is a dose of tazkiyah, where we have to apply ourselves and push ourselves. We're not pushing ourselves. Allah has put immense potential inside every single person. But because we're not using it, life gets boring. Deen gets boring. Salat gets boring. Everything gets boring. It's just the unused potential that's speaking out. So these are some things for us to think about. And really some reasons why we should all start pushing ourselves a little bit more. It's the end of the year, and this is where shaitan will try to make us waste all the good stuff that's happened. And this is when we fight back. We push back against him and we say, we're not going to let you do that. We've spent many days doing certain things, trying to get certain things right, and we're not about to let you undo that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.